One of my main roles is actually the subject matter expert for electrification because it's the biggest change that we've seen in 100
Forever.
years.
Yeah.
There's a lot of myths, and some of those were probably applicable in the very early days. When the battery was damaged, there were no options for repair or replacement. Things have moved on so fast and so significantly. We will offer better scores for vehicles that have repairable batteries. It keeps the insurance premiums down, and that's what we need for the future.
Hello, and welcome to Beyond the Battery, a new series from EV Battery Solutions where we chat with industry experts about the biggest EV topics shaping the industry today. I'm your host, Erin Baker, and each episode I'll be joined by a different leader from the world of automotive and electrification. This week, I'm delighted to welcome Dan Harrowell, Principal Engineer, Advanced Technologies at Thatcham Research. In this episode, we'll be discussing what EVs mean for the insurance market. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get into it. Hello, Dan. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, let's start with you giving us an overview of your role and how you arrived at that position.
My current role is the Principal Engineer for Advanced Technologies at Thatcham Research.
Hmm.
And really, it's a role where we're bringing in the new technology and trying to add the definition of risk to it. Is it risk affecting? Is it not risk affecting? Do we need to be concerned about it? Do we need to assess it? Thatcham Research focuses on automotive risk intelligence. And one of my main roles is actually the subject matter expert for electrification because it's the biggest change that we've seen in 100
Forever.
years.
Yeah.
So that's a major focus for us and understanding what the challenges, the risks, but there's also positives in there as well.
And this word risk, because I see it associated a lot with Thatcham. What sort of risks are we talking about? Can we do you guys define risk?
Yeah, that's what we do. We break it down into five pillars really in the automotive sector around performance of the vehicles, the safety of those vehicles, around theft, and also around damageability and repairability, how the vehicle is well protected during an incident, and then how easy is it to repair afterwards. So we break it down into those five pillars, and that's called vehicle risk rating.
Right. And those last two pillars, one can imagine before electrification meant something very different to what they mean now. And also those last two have really grown in prominence and significance
Yeah,
for
yeah.
electric.
I think a lot of people talk about, things being more challenging, but they're just different.
Okay.
They're different, and we need to learn how to do things. So we work a lot with the repair industry as well, trying to teach the repair industry what is different and how you need to do things in the future, because there are fundamental differences between petrol, diesel vehicles, and electric vehicles.
Yeah. And what about your background? Like, so
Um,
engineering?
yep, 20 years experience leading teams in design, engineering, testing, and manufacture of cars in the automotive industry. I've been lucky enough to travel globally and work in the automotive industry across the world, and also was lucky enough to be in China in the mid 2010s, living and working there when they had their EV explosion. That's why
Wow.
you're seeing a lot of advanced EVs coming through. Is that was
Yeah.
very early on that they pushed hard on the development of EVs. So that's why we're seeing a lot of new EV entrants into the British market.
So what were you doing in China and how long were you there for?
I was doing a number of roles. I was working and living there for about 2.5 years, but I worked with China teams for about 10 years. But that was in a JV space. Back
Right.
then, it was joint ventures.
Yeah.
Big incumbent manufacturers were working with the local Chinese manufacturers,
Yeah.
and they've really upskilled because you see the local market entrants coming into the UK now, and they are particularly good vehicles.
Yeah. Yeah. And have you always done automotive engineering or did you
I
start in it?
have, yes,
Okay.
all my whole life. Yep.
Oh, okay, very good. I like it.
Mm.
Um, okay, let's start with the basics here for those of us that aren't engineers. What makes EVs different from ICE vehicles when it comes to insurance and risk assessment? Because that's at the heart of so much of what you do at Thatcham now.
Yeah, we produced a 90-page report about a few years ago. It was a very early days, and it was based on the potential risks of adoption of EVs and challenges. And a lot of those risks have actually gone away.
Right,
And
interesting.
it's back 3 or 4 years ago, in a repair workshop, they'd never seen a full EV before.
Yeah.
Now, if you walk into a workshop now, everybody knows about the safety protocols, what the EV vehicles are, etc., etc. So things have changed very rapidly, but we're left with really one challenge that's centered around the high voltage battery, because it's such a fundamental piece of the vehicle, and it's the most expensive costing
Mm,
piece of equipment that we've ever seen in
mm.
vehicles before.
I mean, we're talking kind of 15 £15,000 for a battery, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. And initially, there was a thought process that this is a component. This is the most expensive component we've ever seen. When realistically, it's a subsystem, and we need to learn how to repair batteries, because it's a battery casing. It's lots of cells. There's a battery management system, and there's a cooling system in there. They're all systems, so it's a subsystem that we need to learn to manage, repair, recycle, all of those elements to complete the circular economy
Yeah.
that we're working towards.
And if you had to kind of characterize where we are on that learning journey, you said 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I mean, how many trained EV technicians did we have in the country? How many? Well, now we're up to kind of 60,000 trained
Exactly. Yeah.
EV technicians, aren't we? Which sounds to me like a huge number, but maybe it's still quite a small percentage.
Yeah, we're still worried that that's not going to be enough. So there's lots and lots more training happening, and we do that at Thatcham too. We do a lot of
Do you?
training
I didn't
around
realise.
and modifying a lot of our courses recently to include electrification.
Interesting. How much is battery repairability influencing insurance premiums today? Because it seems to me like the question around battery repairability is influencing everything. I mean, consumers, when they are thinking about going electric, like before they've even chosen their car and got that far, when they're first thinking about it, one of the first places they go to in their minds is what happens if it's in a crash. I keep hearing that they've got to be written off. You can't repair them. We haven't got any trained technicians. Or it's off the road waiting to be repaired forever. So that's why insurance premiums are sky high. Plus, they catch fire all the time, so they're very dangerous, and that's as far as they get. And so they're like, no thanks, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, there's a lot of myths, and some of those were probably applicable in the very early days, where you know when a battery was damaged, there were no options for repair or replacement, etc., etc. But things have moved on so fast and so significantly, and that economy is still building. That the fact of the cost of the battery is the biggest influence on the vehicle repair if it is damaged. But you have to scale this, because if you think only 6% of vehicles are involved in an accident, and
Mhm.
currently only 4% of those are EVs,
Mhm.
because we're only at 4% in our market. And then a even smaller proportion have battery damage. So at the minute, when we're talking about battery damage, it's not a huge challenge in an influence, but we can see it being in the future.
Right.
So when we scale up, and as I said, only 4%, when you start talking 20, 30, 40%,
Yeah.
and the vehicles get older as well, it becomes more of a consideration around.
Do you have any stats just off the top of your head about what percentage of EVs that are uh, in an accident or collision have battery damage that needs repairing?
We don't have exact figures on that yet, and we have to be careful as the data sets are so small
Yeah.
that to try and make definitive answers at this point. So we're building our data sets up and watching and learning to try and understand that. But what we're seeing is not the figures aren't too bad. It's in some ways we think it could be centered around all of the scare stories around
Yeah.
EVs that.
Because the reason I ask that, I suppose, is because it's one of those things where you have to throw the question back at consumers a bit and say, well, hang on, you don't have the same question around petrol and diesel. For
Mm,
example, out of all the petrol and diesel cars that are in any sort of collision or scuff or anything on a day-to-day basis, what percentage of them have engines that need a repair? Hardly any. Most damage
Yeah.
is to bumpers, wing mirrors, and why would that be any different? It's not going to be like if you have any sort of prang in your electric car, my goodness, immediately the battery needs replacing or
Yeah, and the other thing to remember is the engines of vehicles nowadays are so advanced. They're not just I can unbolt bits of it and change it. They're such advanced technology that in some instances you do have to replace a whole engine
yeah,
because they're not as repairable as they used to be because they're so technically deep that we don't have the equipment to be able to do that in a lot of workshops. So it is new technology, but petrol and diesel technology has moved on considerably in the years as well. And I'm not sure they're comparing to what it used to be
yeah,
rather than what it is now.
yeah. I mean, what do you see around insurance premiums being affected by battery repairability?
Um, it's calculated in the risk factor because it's a big cost and a big expense. So currently it is, but we want our risks to evolve.
Mm,
So as we mature vehicle risk rating, we will offer better scores for vehicles that have repairable batteries, that have remanufactured or repairable batteries actually available. So you've got the choice of not putting a brand new battery in. It keeps the insurance premiums down if we
yeah.
have those options. And that's what we need for the future, especially as the vehicles age.
We do, don't we? Because, all consumers are aware of how much of those headlines, 18 months ago that really captured, oh my goodness, EV insurance premiums have shot up by
Yeah,
73% year on year. And people just grabbed hold of those headlines. And again, that was that. It turned loads of people off going electric. But it felt to me like either there was a bit of a data lag there between the insurance industry and the repairability of the batteries, which seemed to me we were getting more EV technicians skilled up. We must be all the
yeah.
time now, and batteries are becoming, therefore, easier and quicker and cheaper to repair.
Yeah, there always will be that lag with new technology because as the new technology come in the first few vehicles, we won't have the available skills or
Mm.
parts. But once we've hit 1.5 million vehicles, which is right about now, I think,
Yeah,
that already we're starting to get a quorum of vehicles and people available who can fix these vehicles, workshops that are fully trained and staffed, the parts are more available. It's not a surprise anymore. So it's becoming the norm.
yeah,
And then when it comes to norm more, we start to see 20, 30, 40% of EVs, which will happen fairly soon when we're at the rates we're buying EVs, then the prices will stabilize.
yeah,
And don't forget the design of vehicles doesn't stay still either. Petrol and diesel vehicles have become more safer and more repairable, and some of the components cheaper over the years due to design and development. The
mm,
electric
mm,
vehicles haven't had that longevity of design and development, and that's coming. So once it's stabilized and we have scale, and we start to see more common platforms as well, which is helps us a lot that we see very similar
yeah,
parts. And it's something that didn't happen in the early days, but it's happening now where you start to see different brands sharing a platform.
yeah,
So that technically would make the batteries the same, and that
yeah.
would be very key for us. If we had fewer battery variants, it'd be much easier.
How many battery variants have we got? Do you know?
Oh, no,
Like, are there
there'd be
loads?
hundreds, and the
Really?
technology is still evolving. We haven't got to where we need to be from a cost and weight point of view,
Yeah,
from
yeah,
battery design and development. So once it gets to a point that it stabilizes a bit, then I think we'll be in that sort of realm.
yeah. And presumably you've got battery variants, and presumably different OEM groups are assembling their batteries within the chassis in different ways. Like some of them are making them a
Yes.
structural part of
Yep.
the chassis, and others aren't, and that must add variance to
Yeah.
how you fix them.
Um, there are different variations, but what tends to happen is the industry does align at some point. It's
Mm.
happened with petrol and diesel variants that, in the early days there were different types, but they tend to align to a very similar aspect at some point.
Once cost comes into,
Yeah, yeah. And they find the right technology.
yeah. So what about the concern going from the issue of them being damaged and repairing to the EV being written off? There's growing concern, or there has been concern that EVs are being written off too easily, uh, with all that conversation around battery pack repairability. Is that trend diminishing? Will it reverse? Will we get to the point where they're not being written off simply because the battery's been fairly easily damaged?
I think there's a lot of aspects that we can improve. One of them is the circular economy. At the minute, most vehicles that have a damaged battery, the only option is a new battery. That's very expensive. So obviously, as vehicles age, that becomes a risk for write-off. But the more options we have and the availability we have for remanufactured, refurbished, or repaired batteries will help complete that circular economy and keep the cost down, and that will, nullify that risk of vehicles being written off.
Yeah.
We expect it to stabilize more in the future, but it's the whole ecosystem as well. People being trained from the person who first assesses the damage of your vehicle. They need to be trained to understand what the damage to an EV battery means. So
Yeah.
there's lots of facets and little elements of the system, the industry that's improving, but it's taking time to train all of those different industries, but it's happening very fast.
Is it a kind of exponential curve where the growth that we've had to date isn't the rate of growth we'll have in the future? It'll be a quicker rate of growth around things like repairability, not writing off batteries and so on.
I think in the short few years that we've had, the rate of experience, as you said, from going from a few hundred people to tens of thousands of people who understand what an EV is and how to repair it and how to be safe around it is very, very rapid. We only need a few years of that in the UK before we sort of peak and flatten off, because most
Mm,
of the industry understands EV vehicles and how to be safe around them and how to repair them. So I think the growth rate is significant. People just don't, it doesn't feel fast enough for them. But
mm.
the amount of trained people we have for 4% of the vehicles is a lot
That's what
currently.
I thought. It
Yeah,
sounds like a
yeah,
lot, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I think it comes back to that thing of consumers. A significant number of consumers won't make the switch to electric until the narrative is perfect,
yeah.
not until the narrative is where the narrative is around petrol and diesel, because we're very rapidly there. They kind of want it to be better than petrol and diesel.
Yeah, yeah, and it's when you speak to people who understand EVs and people that haven't experienced them yet, it's a very different discussion.
Yeah, yeah,
And in some ways, it's equalizing already. Some of the data saying are for certain stats that battery electric vehicles are as good as petrol and diesel
yeah,
in a lot of cases and instances. And what we found in the UK in the last few years, that we have had a lot of high spec vehicles come in. So they are very, very safe vehicles. They've got very high Euro NCAP star rating, and they are full of active safety equipment. So this is all reducing the risk of actually having an accident in the first place.
yeah. True. Have we got a decent supply of remanufactured batteries coming on stream?
We have, I think there's a lot of companies looking into it and starting to explore into it, because it is a gap.
Yeah.
It's a gap in the market. It's a gap in the circular economy. If you can visualize a diagram where you've got a full circular economy, there's lots of loops in there, and we haven't quite constructed those loops yet. But to be honest, we've not had the vehicles,
No.
so, or the damaged batteries
Yeah. You haven't got
available.
the donor
Yeah,
batteries.
to repair yet. So
Yeah.
that's starting to happen now,
Yeah.
and we really need that to happen over the next few years. So it's building that circular economy, but what does need to come with that is the battery diagnostics.
Yeah. Right.
So it's everybody being able to understand from a diagnostic point of view what that battery's telling you. At
Yeah.
the minute, a lot of the manufacturers are doing it in very different ways, and it's quite difficult for a smaller sort of independent repairers or people working across brands to actually plug into a battery easily and understand what's happening. So one of the second focus at Thatcham is around diagnostic
Mm.
equipment and working with third party manufacturers, people who design this equipment, to try and get the right equipment to the industry to allow people to make the right assessments around batteries. So it's not only whether they if they need repairing is the first decision.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
There's a lot of fear around batteries, and if we could get really robust diagnostics, which the VMs have themselves, but that's got to filter down into the whole industry,
Yeah.
and be able to quickly and happily say that battery's okay, or this battery needs to be repaired, or unfortunately we can't repair this one, so this one's going to recycling. So that's why we've got a major focus around the circular economy and diagnostics.
Yes, yeah. I mean, all that makes sense. And as to the kind of being able to reassure the consumer along sustainability lines and so
Yeah,
on, which is
yeah.
another part of the
That's the whole circular
yeah,
economy piece, you know.
yeah.
Recycling is great, but before we get to recycling, we want to know if we can repair,
And reman.
reuse, remanufacture those batteries and get them back in the system because they're very expensive components.
Yeah, yeah. So as EV adoption scales, do you expect the insurance landscape to rebalance, or some of these challenges here to stay around insurance
I
premiums?
think it's starting to rebalance as well. There's been some good feedback around the general insurance industry about prices are flattening now.
Yeah,
So and EV prices are coming down as well.
yeah,
So we're starting to see some normalization. I expect it to normalize more. And I think it can normalize and we be back in the same position as which we were currently with petrol and diesel if we do fix these problems. And it's really building that economy of remanufactured, refurbished batteries to keep the normal business case that we have today, where if a vehicle comes in, we can get it repaired quickly, because that's another key factor in
yeah,
insurance is the time it takes. If we have to wait around for parts, but if we've got a remanufactured or refurbished battery and we can just swap it out, that doesn't take long at all. Check the vehicle, that vehicle can go out very quickly. So
yeah.
that's the focus for us.
It's an extraordinary series of opportunities for so many key players in the market and the industry, isn't it, at the
Yep,
moment? So we need more technicians, need more diagnostic tools and diagnostic tool providers, we need more remanufactured batteries, more the list is endless. There's
yeah,
like a call to arms for
it
people with
is.
these skills to come forwards.
And it's a great opportunity. One of the things we're trying to do when we lobby with the government is around apprenticeships. Is
Yeah.
this is actually a great opportunity
Yes.
because there's some bad imagery around working in a garage. But if you're an electrical engineer or a diagnostic engineer working on software or batteries are repaired in nice, clean
Yeah.
environments, etc. There's a lot of potential opportunities for the future for skills within the UK's for this
Yeah,
system.
hugely, aren't there?
Yeah,
There's such an education piece to be done on students about all sorts of jobs in the motoring industry and
yeah,
how EV has widened that pot of skills that's needed, but
mm,
also in a way presented some cleaner opportunities for people that,
yeah,
same thing that happened with motoring journalism. If I speak to students about becoming a motoring journalist, all the girls out there at the university say, "Oh no, I don't want to get my hands dirty. Haven't you got to wear an overall and get all oily?" Like, I write for Vogue. You can just do all sorts of this
yeah.
sustainability journalism, and the same thing applies to apprenticeships, technician apprenticeships, and so on.
There's fantastic job opportunities out there. You know, IT, technology, and the
Yeah,
diagnostics, as you say, electrical engineering around the batteries. It's if you've been into these battery repair workshops, they're actually quite nice
yeah,
environments.
right, yeah, interesting. What role then does Thatcham play in helping manufacturers design these EVs to be safer and more insurable?
Yeah, there's a big focus in Thatcham research about insurability by design. So it's
I
we
like that phrase, insurability
Yeah,
by design. It's
we
good.
we take all the knowledge and the data and the crash test results that we have and information from the insurance, and we go and we work, we collaborate, we don't blame, we collaborate with the manufacturers and try and train them and teach them, if you make it these few things better, your vehicle is much more repairable, it'll be much cheaper, it'll get a better score. It's better overall. So there's a really big focus and a lot of work that we've been doing, and a lot of it we've had to do in China. We've been doing a lot of visits to the China manufacturers to
Right.
help them understand the UK market, because it is
Yeah.
slightly different to other markets.
It's a bonkers market in many respects,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's very different in the way the insurance is set up. So we've been teaching them, and as with China, they're making significant and rapid improvements to their vehicles to make them more repairable and insurable. So
Mm.
we've had some fantastic progress there.
Yeah.
But we also do other things. We produce methods and other information for repairers. And one of the things that we've just released is EV Alert. So it allows repairers to, when they just plug in the reg of that vehicle, they can see that it's an EV vehicle and all the safety procedures, the shutdown procedures, and what they need to do. And be cautious. In this time of change, it's good to give that information and allow them to remove
Yeah.
that sort of fear around it, so they can see what the vehicle is, what components it has, the voltage, and understand what they need to do with that vehicle for repair.
It's really interesting, isn't it? In a way, it doesn't matter what part of the industry you're in, your
Mm,
part, my part, government, OEM, retailer. EV conversations come down to providing clear, accessible information
yeah,
and collaboration. I mean, collaboration, if there's one buzzword that sums up this
yeah,
entire Behind the Battery series, everyone sitting on that sofa has talked about collaboration.
yeah.
Yeah, interesting. You, by the sounds of it, see advanced technologies all the time. What's one innovation or trend that you think could reshape how we insure EVs?
There's a lot of new technology come through. The electrification is enabling lots of other technologies like act by wire, so steer by wire and brake by wire, which is um, no mechanical control; it's full electrical control.
Mm,
That won't influence insurance that much because we feel that we're quite confident. We've been flying planes that way for 50 years. Our throttle pedal has been by wire for
yeah,
over
yeah.
20 years. So we don't affect that's very risky changing. But something like solid state batteries coming through, proper solid state batteries that have no electrolyte, they will fundamentally make electric vehicles more safer than
Mm,
petrol and diesel,
mm,
and the fact that they're probably smaller and more flexible, they may be more easily to package in a vehicle and
mhm,
remove. And
mhm,
as you say, sort of shells or cells or modules being built into chassis, etc. We
mm,
might see some flexibility or ease of repair. So I think that technology will have, as it comes through, will have another change for the positive on EVs around how we
mm.
manage them and work with them.
Fascinating.
Mm.
Thank you very much, Dan. It's been a great pleasure having you on today.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for watching. Please remember to like and share this episode and follow EV Battery Solutions Europe on LinkedIn or YouTube to keep up to date with the rest of the series.